Welcome to the Mindful Politics podcast. My name is George Kao, and I am honored to have you join me for this. Thank you for your attention. I am hopeful that this podcast might contribute some more, mindfulness and positivity to the political conversation, and particularly to some hot button issues that typically divide people and make people hate each other. Let me first share why this podcast exists. Why did I decide to do this as a side project? I'm not getting paid to do this, and it's certainly completely something that I don't know if it's going to take off or not. I don't really even care whether it takes off. It's something, honestly, I feel like I needed to do for myself. And hopefully some of you will get inspired by this and maybe even do something like this for yourselves, and with your friends as well. So I used to talk a bit about politics years ago. I'll tell you more about my history of politics in the upcoming episodes. When you check out the first 10 to 15 minutes of each of the upcoming episodes, you'll hear my story. But I basically stopped talking about politics, I think at least 10 years ago. I stopped talking about it. And the reason was because I found that every time I did talk about it, number one, I realized that I didn't know enough about what I was talking about to feel comfortable making statements and saying this is the truth or this is the right way of doing things. But number two, I also found people that I liked, that were friends or colleagues, who had different views. Sometimes we would feel, a bit annoyed at each other or judgy towards each other when we got into these political conversations, and that affected our working relationship or affected our friendship. And I just felt it's too bad. I mean, I've lost friends over talking about politics, unfortunately. Thankfully, not too many, which is why I stopped talking about it. And I've always been trying to find a more compassionate and collaborative and truthfully effective way to talk about politics without turning people against each other, without just saying, I'm right, you're wrong, or if I don't know something, I'll just, pretend I know something or quickly Google something and from my side and say, well, here are the facts, or something like that. So this is why I wanted to do this podcast, is for me to work my way into a more effective, compassionate, uplifting way of talking about politics with people that I might typically disagree with, or also talking to friends and colleagues who have also shied away from talking about politics because of the rancor and the negativity that it tends to cause among people. I have this faith that there is a wiser way through. There's a wiser and more enlightened way to discuss politics that's not about, hey, listen, I'm right, and because I just mostly listen to my own side of the news, and you listen to your side, and we just can never agree even on facts, let alone policy and what's right to do. So in the upcoming episodes, you'll also hear more about the vision. But as you can hear, basically, that's my personal reason for why I am doing this. I hope that this will give you a bit of a template for having these conversations with your friends, family, colleagues in a way that doesn't break you guys apart, but break you all apart, but rather it even brings you closer together with your friends, family, and colleagues, coworkers, etc., neighbors, and therefore allowing us to actually build a better society together by learning from each other, because nobody is going around well, as far as I know, nobody I know anyway, among my friends is going around going, um, I'm evil and I want this thing to hurt I want this policy so that other people can be hurt. Obviously, everyone is thinking their policy is somehow going to make the world a better place, right? Right? Like, think about the people, the friends of yours who disagree with you completely on fill in the blank. They don't disagree with you because they think they're evil and they're going to make the world worse. No, they think they're right and you're wrong, and you think you're right and they're wrong. You think each of you thinks that the policy is going to make the world a better place. Well, are you going to just stay there forever and say, oh, I'm right, you're wrong? Or maybe I can learn, maybe this is my friend, this is my neighbor, this is my family member, this is my coworker. Are you just going to hate the other person forever? I believe that a wiser way forward is to be willing to listen, because I think that grows us as people, and it grows the relationship, and it grows society to be better. So some of you are wondering about if there's a meaning behind the colors of the logo of Mindful Politics. As of this recording, the colors, some of you are like saying it's very loud colors, or why did you choose these colors? Well, there's a very specific meaning behind why the colors were chosen, and I will tell you about that later. But first, I want to share that my basic stance coming to this podcast is I'm here to learn. I don't know. There's a lot I don't know. And I'm not afraid to say that. Whether it's about abortion, gun rights, climate change policies, basic income or income inequality, or fill in the blank, whatever social issues. I don't think I think I'm a fairly well-educated person, and, graduated from college, went to grad school, and I'm fairly well read. I, read news just because I'm, sometimes bored, and I read just as many of you do. So I'm fairly well educated, but I feel like the more I learn and the more I have conversations, the more I realize, oh my gosh, the other side has points that I never considered, and I want to learn. And so I'm willing. I'm curious if you agree with it. I'm willing to say I'm wrong, and that's like the hardest thing, right, in a political conversation. You know what? You're giving me facts that I never considered before. You're giving me a viewpoint of a story that I never thought about from that perspective before. And you're right, I need to look into this more. And my side, not my side, but my current perspective might be wrong. But what's hard in this stance is if someone is being righteous or self-righteous and saying, yeah, see, George, you're wrong and I'm right, then I feel like I don't want to, like, as a normal human person, I don't want to look stupid, right? Who wants to look stupid and uneducated and evil and ignorant and selfish? Nobody wants that. So it's like, if you're going to say, well, George, see, I'm so educated, I'm more educated than you, and I'm going to tell you what's right, that doesn't feel good to me, because then it feels like you're being prideful, and you're making me feel stupid and ignorant and uncaring and selfish, and blah 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 blah. I just care about myself, and that's why I didn't educate myself on these issues or whatever. Guess what? There are issues that's true for you as well, right? Like this. I'm just saying that both sides. If I'm very well educated on certain issues, and I could say, hey, how come you don't care enough about the world to educate yourself on that issue? And you're wrong. Like, if I said that to you, you would feel slighted and not wanting to talk more with me about this stuff. And so ultimately, what I hope that we can practice as we have political conversations is a bit of humility, to say, I'm willing to learn and change my perspective. Number one. Number two, I'm willing to appreciate your perspective and appreciate you as a person, even if I think that I may have been more educated on this issue than you. I'm willing to to appreciate your story and perspective behind, because maybe even though you haven't read as much, or I haven't read as much, we have experiences that informed why we believe this way. And it would be interesting to hear what that is from you, because I probably, you know, shows me a different side of life that I've never lived through. And togetherness is ultimately what I hope we can form, is if we are careful and aware to not make each other feel badly. Like, why would we want that, right? Like, it's better for us to make each other feel cared for in a conversation that's about learning, and we make each other feel cared for and make each other feel smart. Even if I haven't been educated as much on these issues, if you can make me feel smart or a good person, like, George, this is why you're a good person. This is why you're smart. This is why you, right? Like, the same thing. If I can make you feel like a good person and feel smart, well, then we are much more willing to continue the conversation and learn more from each other and bring other people that we care about into the conversation, and ultimately we all grow together. You see what I mean? So that's really like, I'm coming to this saying, political conversations are typically so myopic in, let's focus on the correct position rather than the heart. A political conversation is also a human conversation, and there are hearts being slighted and feeling prideful and feeling, like, I wonder what the person, if the person respects me, as I wonder if the person thinks I'm smart. I wonder if the person thinks I'm a good person. So so as you'll hear in the upcoming episodes, I try to have this kind of uplifting and collaborative conversation with some of my colleagues and friends. And I hope that these upcoming episodes of conversations between me and two other friends will give you a bit of a template to have this kind of conversation with your friends as well, with your family members and your neighbors and coworkers. And really, my hope is not that this thing becomes popular and I somehow, get sponsored, or I really, honestly, I'm grateful that my current career, my main career as, business, consultant person, is doing great, is doing fine. I don't need money from this podcast. I don't plan to have any sponsors or any, take your money or whatever like that. This is truly a volunteer and side project for me. What I hope, though, even if only a few of you ever listen to this, what I hope is that you'll say, that's an interesting way to dialogue with friends. Maybe I should try this with friends too. Like, I hope that you will actually take bits or the whole thing, whatever you want to take from the way I run these episodes, as you'll hear from my conversations with friends and coming up in the next few episodes, that you'll take that kind of dialogue and do it with your friends. And maybe some of you might even be inspired to start your own podcast or YouTube channel or Instagram account or TikTok or whatever. I guess not so much TikTok, that's too short of format, but Instagram, YouTube, podcast, that you'll actually want to start this with your friends too. Not that you become famous, but by doing it with friends, like a podcast like this, it inspires them to think about these things and to share the episodes with their friends, who then will be inspired to think about things this way. So I'm hoping that just not by you sharing my podcast, I don't care if you share my podcast, I care if you do this conversation with your friends, and maybe you can start your own podcast. Because like I said, if you start your own podcast, not that you'll become famous, maybe, who knows, but that your own friends will listen to your podcast. That's my hope. Several of your friends or family or coworkers will listen to your own version of Mindful Politics podcast, and that might inspire them to think more collaboratively and mindfully about politics and how to talk about it. And by doing that, hopefully we have this ripple effect, this grassroots ripple effect of people having conversations with others. So I don't plan on becoming like a Braver Angels. It's one of my favorite political organizations. Braver Angels, or there are other Let's see, another influence is Jeff Salzman's Daily Evolver podcast. So I have like several influences from this kind of space. I don't plan on becoming an institute or a famous influencer. I'm actually too busy in my main career to do that. But I hope that this will be a small effect that creates a duplicatable kind of model for you to follow, and thereby have a positive effect on your friends as well. So that's my hope, that please copy whatever I'm doing so that your friends can benefit from it too. So lastly, I guess what I'll say is, and by the way, I am doing this right now. I'm recording this as a Facebook Live, and those of you and some of you watching this on a YouTube channel. So feel free to comment below if you want to add your thoughts, questions, suggestions for the process here, from my podcast, or this suggestions for this kind of dialogue, or opinions. Okay, so the last thing I'll talk about are the colors of the logo of the Mindful Politics podcast. As you'll notice, the color scheme isn't exactly typically visually integrated, you might say. All right, let's just say the colors are kind of ugly, but there's a reason that the colors are together. Okay, so you'll notice in the logo, there's, by the way, I don't know, maybe some of you might be listening to this years afterwards, and maybe we've already changed the logo to be more visually pleasing. But right now, as of this recording, in November of 2022, the colors include blue, red, purple, green, yellow, and turquoise. It's like, what in the world? How do these colors, why do these colors mix together? Like, if you were a graphic designer of any kind, if you're visually oriented, you'd be like, yeah, this really clashes. So let me explain why these colors are fitting together in the logo. So blue and red, hopefully you'll recognize that from the American political scene. Blue usually stands for Democrats or liberals, and red usually stands for Republicans and conservatives. And so blue and red is typically, clashing, and I'm trying to at least bring those two voices and perspectives together to uplift everything. And then blue and red. Okay, so you got blue and red, and then you've got purple, which is typically understood as, how can we, like, there's purple states, which are like states. I don't even know which one is a purple state anymore. Is it Ohio still, Florida still? I don't know if they're purple anymore, or Arizona. I don't know, Michigan. But there are states that are purple states, which are people that are quite, the blue and reds are battling it out every election cycle, that kind of thing. So purple stands for the integration or the living together of blues and reds. Okay, so now you understand blue, red, purple. That's why it's in the logo. But what about green, yellow, and turquoise? Any guesses? You're welcome to comment below. Before you could pause the recording, comment below if you happen to have any guesses of that. Well, I'll go ahead and share it with you. So green doesn't stand for the Green Party, as you might imagine. Although I have a little bit of history with the Green Party, as you'll hear in the upcoming episodes. Right now, in case, just to give you a shortcut, what are you, George? Are you liberal or conservative or whatever? Honestly, I'm confused. I'm politically homeless, because I have been a far left progressive, even a socialist, and I've also been a far right, like, libertarian. So I'm just honestly quite confused. And anyway, so let me continue on. So why the green, yellow, turquoise? They are from a system called spiral dynamics. And I invite you actually to Google spiral dynamics. Go ahead, give it a try. Google it. Spiral, S-P-I-R-A-L, just like a staircase spiral. Dynamics, how dynamic something is or not. Spiral dynamics. So what is spiral dynamics? It is a system I came across this actually in college, like decades ago, and then I forgot about it And then recently, one of my guests in one of the upcoming episodes, as you will hear, Eric Klein, reminded me about spiral dynamics. I'm like, oh, that's right, that exists, and that's a thing, and that's helpful for politics, along with leadership and friendships and relationships. And anyway, so spiral dynamics is the theory that individuals and societies go through a psychological development process where they go from being, like, for example, really tribal, being ruled by a single dictator leader, tribe leader or whatever, to being more materialistic and chasing, money and status and blah blah blah, to be. And I'm not an expert on spiral dynamics. I'm like relearning it again. So I'm like talking right now from the top of my head here. So please Google it and learn it yourself, or find out about it. And then from there, they might get disenchanted by materialism. Like you said, you could tell this is both an individual psychological development, but also societies and groups go through these kinds of stages. So anyway, they become materialistic, and then they get disenchanted to saying, oh, maybe money and status can't solve all of our fulfillment issues. So they become more socially, more sort of like socially oriented. They want to take care of more people. They become more, you might say, heart-centered. And then from there, they kind of bounce back to say, well, maybe not all completely heart-centered, might not be wise enough. And then they become more about a systems thinker, to think how we integrate. And then from there, they like evolve towards more like enlightened way of being able to take on perspectives from many different sides, et cetera. But the long of the short, a short of the long rather, is that spiral dynamics, it connects with the integral theory of Ken Wilber. Ken Wilber had really popularized it. Anyway, the phrase that I really love from all this is transcend and include. Transcend and include. Rather than I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm going to dominate. I hope my viewpoint will dominate society, and then your viewpoint will die off, or something like that. Instead of that, we transcend and include, because every viewpoint along the psychological development journey has value for that stage of development, and it has value to contribute to other higher levels. So transcending and including, it's kind of like, you don't say, oh, my childhood was a waste. I wish I never had a childhood. No, that doesn't make sense. She's like, no, my childhood had certain experiences that made me who I am today. I transcended my childhood, and I'm including all the experiences I had, because it makes me more whole. In my wisdom, in my experiences, be able to talk to other people, collaborate, etc. So transcend and include. That's what I'm hoping that, at least right now, and talk to me and come back to this podcast in 2 or 3 years, and I may have transcended and included and using other systems too. But this is where the green, yellow, and turquoise colors from our logo, the Mindful Politics logo, comes from. The green, yellow, turquoise are different stages of development. So that's why the colors are all, and you might say that was a bad idea to put all the colors. That's okay, I know, but at least there's something meaningful there that allows me to talk about it. So anyway, that is pretty much all I have for you today. I look forward to your comments below if you want to share any. I look forward to seeing whether you feel inspired by the upcoming conversations, and making you want to come out of your political shell and talk to your friends in that kind of way. Or some of you already are quite activist, and maybe the episodes coming up will give you more perspectives that inform your activism, so that it can be even more effective and collaborative and truly influential on society. So in a positive and uplifting way. So thank you so much for joining me for this journey. Thank you for your attention. Again, I hope that instead of sharing this podcast with others, I hope that you'll try this podcast with others. Try this kind of template and these kinds of philosophies and ideas in your political conversations, so that we can all find a better and more connected way to move humanity forward. Thank you so much for listening and watching. And again, below this, in the episode show notes, you'll find a link where you can comment on this. Some of you are watching this on YouTube already. Comment below. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to hearing, to seeing your feedback. Thanks so much.